All right, so with the NBA season starting today, I can't believe it's already here, but it is starting later tonight. We have two games tonight. I'm really excited for both of them, but with the season starting, I thought we would take a look back at last year and rank the top 10 best players going into this season. So it's definitely majority based on last season. You know, if a player was injured, I based it off of what we last saw when they were healthy. And I do take into account, like stats, clutchness, skills, all that different stuff. And, I'm going to get into that with each individual player here. But obviously this just comes down to my opinion. Don't take it too seriously. And yeah, there's a bunch of players that I really wanted to squeeze in here to the top 10. There's so many good, talented players in the NBA, but only 10 could make it. And these are the ones that did. So at 10, we have Jimmy Butler. The thing that I like about Jimmy Butler is his versatility. He's come a long way as a scorer in the NBA. It seems like he improves on that side of the ball every year. And to the point now where he is like a legitimate number one scoring option. And I don't like how the Heat use him. I think they're way too over-reliant on his scoring ability. And like I said, he's not even like a natural scorer. Like KD, he's a natural scorer. Steph, natural scorer. Kyrie, same thing. Jimmy Butler, I don't really think of him like that, but that's how the Heat use him, particularly in playoff series. And that's why I was not confident in the Heat last year because, if Jimmy didn't average 40 points, basically, they weren't going to win a game. So I have my problems with the Heat's roster, but Jimmy as an individual player, I think it's hard to argue that he's not in the top 10 just for his versatility on both sides of the ball. Great defender. I love his mentality and his leadership of this team, and he really just embodies that Heat culture. He led this team to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, led them to the finals only a couple years ago. So I think he has to be in the top 10. Number 9, we have Jayson Tatum. Just led his team to a finals appearance. I believe he's only like 23 or 24, so obviously really impressive whenever a player that young is able to lead their team to the finals. I know he didn't perform too great in the finals. Like his counting stats looked okay. He averaged only over 20 points per game, but his efficiency was god-awful, and that's why a lot of people gave him crap for his performance in the finals. But like I said, the fact that he was even there for me was the impressive part. And he's probably there's going to be a point in time where he is going to have an argument for the best two-way player in the NBA. I think he's one of the best perimeter wing defenders in the league, and offensively, there are some holes in his game, but for a forward, those are things that I don't really care for. Like he's not the best passer in the world, but I don't really need that in my forward. If a forward can be a great passer, that's kind of more of a plus than it is anything. He can shoot from anywhere. The only real knock I have on Tatum's game is at some points he looks to be really passive. There's points where Tatum is just kind of standing around at the three-point line, not really trying to make any moves off the ball. And that can kind of be reciprocated by the rest of the Celtics. They see Tatum doing that, so they kind of figure they can just get away with doing the same thing. So that's definitely one critique I have of his, but overall, he's still a great young player. At 8, this is probably the most controversial placement on the list, and that is Nikola Jokic. I'm not trying to deny Jokic's talent. I just think that there are 7 players better than him right now. I think his advanced stats have really inflated his status in the NBA. The fact that he has 2 MVPs, I'm kind of okay with him winning the one in 2021 because I think LeBron and Embiid both had better cases, but they were both hurt for a big chunk of the year. So I was okay with him winning it then. But this past year, in 2022, I think both Giannis and Embiid both had better cases than Jokic. We're not going to get into that now because it's done and over with. There's no point in harping on it. But it seems like every decade we give out these MVPs based on analytical stuff and advanced stats. Steve Nash was a back-to-back MVP winner because of his advanced stats, and he's generally acknowledged as one of the worst MVPs. So I don't know why we did it again with Jokic, but it happened. But again, outside of that stuff, he's still a fantastic player, really fun to watch. The thing that's really cool about him is he's essentially a point guard in a center's body. So it allows him to do a lot of different stuff on the floor. Many regard him as the best passer in the NBA. The only real knock for me on Jokic's game is I'd like to see him improve as a defender. I think for center especially, I hold defense as a very important thing. For guard, it's not really important if you can defend. Wing, it's pretty important. And then for my center, I kind of consider it essential that my center is good at defense. And for Jokic, he is mediocre at best, and I feel like a lot of people just give him a pass on that side of the ball because he's so great offensively. And I get that if you want to do that with a guard, but with your anchor of your defense is not a good defender. That's the only thing that I feel like people just kind of stuff under the rug with Jokic. He definitely got better last year. Like before, he was a complete negative. Now I think he's like mediocre at best. But that's where I have Jokic. Really good. Really not trying to sound like a hater of his. I just think his status in the NBA has been overinflated by advanced stats. 7, Kawhi Leonard. I think people have forgotten how good Kawhi Leonard was because he missed all of last year. But he is probably the best two-way player in the league when he is fully healthy and engaged. He's not at every night. He's not going to give you the defensive effort, but when it comes down to the clutch moment, when he has to take over a game, he turns back the notch and takes over games. And I always point back to the 2021 series first-round matchup against the Mavericks, where in the clutch he completely shut Luka down and took over that game. And so, yeah, and I could honestly even be underrating Luka, having him at 7, because when he's fully healthy, fully engaged, trying to win games and not just load managing all the time, he actually is one of the best players, not just in the league now, but I think he is one of the best players in NBA history. So I really hope he's able to stay fully healthy this year. At number 6, just directly above him, we have Luka Doncic, who's basically just an offense on his own. You could put anyone around Luka, and he's going to be a great offense. There's really no flaw to his offensive game. Yeah, you could say he's not that athletic, but it doesn't matter because he makes up for it. And, the thing that's unique about him is he's not particularly fast. He's not athletic, but he's just so skilled that he gets his own in the rhythm of the game. So that plus his passing is incredible. He basically has limitless range. He has the clutch gene. There's really no flaw in his offensive game. He is a unicorn, as they call it. And I think he's only 23, and he's made the All-NBA team 3 times. Think about how incredible that is. All-NBA first team 3 times in his career already. That is absolutely insane. But now we're going into the top 5. At 5, I have Joel Embiid. I think he's the unquestionable best center in the NBA. When you compare him to Jokic, I think they're kind of a wash offensively. Defense is where I think Embiid really separates himself from Jokic, because when Embiid is healthy, he's one of probably the top 5 best defenders in the NBA, and a guy that I think should always be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. So, I get why people like Jokic, but I just think because of Embiid's elite defense, and for the fact that they're basically the same offensively, not obviously their skill sets are very different, but in terms of their offensive impact, they're probably right around the same level. The defense for me is what makes Embiid the clear better player in my opinion. But offensively, yeah, he's dominant. I'd say him and Giannis are the most dominant players in the NBA right now. I think he has the best footwork for a big man in the NBA right now. I've heard Kobe Bryant comparisons. I've heard comparisons that he's Kobe Bryant in a center's body, and he's one of the better stretch 5s in the NBA as well. So he's a very all-around complete player. The only knock on him is injuries. He always gets hurt, and it seems like it's always at the worst time that he gets hurt, because last year I think they would have beat the Heat in the playoffs had he not gotten injured, but he did. He missed the first 2 games. They went down 2-0 to Miami, and that was kind of it. But I still believe he is the best center in the NBA. 4 is LeBron. LeBron, for his age, I think it's extremely impressive for what he's doing at his age. Now, I do get the argument that a lot of his stats came in garbage time. That's not exactly all his fault, just because the Lakers were a really bad team, and LeBron could only do what he could with what was out on the floor. But it is important to note that he did want Westbrook. He was a main proponent of that, and after they had a disaster of a year, he kind of tried to back off that. No, you're the reason why Westbrook is there. But in terms of his play, we all know what LeBron is. Still at the age of 37, a gifted athlete one of the best passers in the NBA. At times can be really good defender when he's engaged, and he's really expanded his shooting range. It used to be his main flaw was his shooting, and now I would actually consider LeBron to be a pretty good shooter in the NBA. So, and I just think the way the Lakers use him is extremely unfair, because at 37, you should not be relied upon as much as LeBron is in this Lakers offense. But he's still at 4. 3, we have Kevin Durant. Might be a controversial thing to put KD over LeBron. I don't know. I think KD is just all around more skilled than LeBron at this point in their careers. I think he does everything at this point better than LeBron, except for passing, of course. Everything else, I would take KD in. Scoring, obviously, better. Every dimension of scoring, I think he's better than LeBron. I think he's a better defender. We've seen glimpses where KD can be an elite defender. And, and another thing is he actually did make the playoffs this past year where LeBron didn't. And you got to keep in mind, 10 out of 15 teams per conference make the playoffs, and LeBron still missed playoffs. I get there was a lot of injuries on that team, but still, whenever you get up here as a top 5 player, there's a lot of expectations. And if you're a top 5 player, people are usually saying, yeah, you should be competing for a title, let alone making playoffs. So I think that's something that kind of holds LeBron down for this list, is just because he did miss playoffs. I know KD did get swept, but we addressed that in the Eastern Conference seeding video. If you want more on that, you can definitely go listen to that, where I kind of went in detail what happened with that stuff. But I'll say it real briefly. KD was the favorite to win MVP before he got hurt. He was on pace to win the scoring title, averaging over 30 per game. The Nets were by far the best team in the East. Then he gets hurt. They lose 9 or 10 straight and drop to the 7th seed and play a stacked Celtics team who has probably the best defense in the NBA. And yeah, there's no excuse for them getting swept. But like I said, it goes deeper than just KD. There's structural flaws with the Nets, including Steve Nash, who I don't think should have ever been a head coach. But I'm just going to stop at that now, because like I said, if you want to hear me talk about the Nets as a franchise, you can definitely listen to that in the Eastern Conference seedings video that I did. I think 2 days ago I put that up. 2 is the reigning Finals MVP, Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, just broke the 3-point record, just won his first Finals MVP. I think everyone kind of acknowledges how good Steph is. I don't really have to tell you why he's this high up on the list. I mean, his impact on an offense, the spacing he creates for people, he's an underrated playmaker. And he has shown that he really does have that clutch ability. Probably the best game of his career was that Game 4 against the Celtics in the Garden, because if they lose that game, they go down 3-1, and that's only obviously the Warriors are the only other team to lose a 3-1 lead, but it's obviously extremely unlikely to come back from a 3-1 lead. But he goes off for, I think, over 40 points, just hitting insane shots in the clutch, and wins that game, and they don't lose another game for the rest of that series, and he gets Finals MVP. So I think he is too. But he's not the best. The best is Giannis. Giannis is the best player, and I think he's head and shoulders above the NBA right now because his impact on both sides of the ball. Steph is obviously, you can argue he's a better offensive player than Giannis because of his three-point ability, but Giannis's impact on defense, you can argue he's the best defensive player and the best offensive player in the NBA. And the big knock on Giannis was always his three-point shooting. He can knock down wide open 3-point shots. He actually takes them now and he can hit them. And, he has ball handling. He can play make. He can basically dunk on anyone. He's probably the most strong player in the NBA. And like I said, he's already won a Defensive Player of the Year. He can block any shot. We all remember the Valley Oop that he blocked in the Suns series. So I don't think really anyone is going to really be upset with me putting Giannis at 1, but yeah, I think that's where he is. And I think had the Bucks had Middleton been healthy this past year, I think the Bucks would have comfortably won the Finals this year. I think they definitely would have beat Boston, because Boston, they went to 7 and Middleton didn't play, and then they would have definitely beat the Heat because the Heat lost to Boston, and Heat also, when they played a healthy Bucks team in 2021, I believe they got swept in the first round by Milwaukee, and then I'm pretty sure they would have beaten the Warriors just because there's no one you can put on Giannis, and obviously Drew Holiday would have disrupted Steph a lot more than I think Smart did. I know Smart won Defensive Player of the Year, but I think Drew Holiday's a better on-ball defender than Smart. That could just be me. I don't know, but that's going to do it for my top 10 NBA players currently. I appreciate you for listening, and stay tuned. We're going to be releasing the Week 6 NFL Power Rankings later today, so if you're interested in that, definitely stay tuned. Thanks for listening.